Brookway. I'm so excited. I have no idea what my PowerPoint slides will look like today. But that's okay, because we're both getting a new message, that means. But we will do our best, and I know God will bring it to be a help. Got a question for you today. Kind of an introductory question. I trust this will be something you can look at and kind of ask yourself and answer, if you would, at least quietly where you're at. Do you see something of Him in you? Do you see something of Him in you? I think it was President Obama yesterday made a little bit of a word given to Muhammad Ali, how we can see a little bit of him in us, okay? But on a greater import, of a much greater scale, do you see something of Him in you? Do you see Jesus in you? I spent the last 6 weeks up in the New England states. I was telling Anna this, and she said, what's been one of the bigger adjustments? I said, if people just aren't engaging, they don't smile. I had one person call me honey, and she was a transplant from Mississippi. I knew it. I thanked her because I was like, there is no, and people are moving so fast, and the language is so coarse and raw. I picked up a few new words that I won't use this morning. I mean, it is crazy up there. I mean, it is culturally different. Now, we're in the Bible Belt, and that can be a blessing or that can be a curse. Because our culture naturally is speaking Christianese. You know, we see people praying in public. We adorn our homes with Christian art or little sayings and post things that are of encouraging value. I get that. But I'm going to ask you a question. More than what's hanging on your wall, more than what you posted this morning on Facebook, more than the prayer that you'll make, over at the restaurant in a few minutes, I want to ask you this. Do you see something of Him in you? Do you see Jesus in your life? Is there evidence that you are a child of the King? Is there evidence? Is there evidence? As people look at my oldest son, Jason, wherever he is, if he left, there you are. I missed you, buddy. They say, wow! There is no, you are the father without it. No DNA testing needed. I mean, Jason and I guess, sorry buddy, but it's the facts. You resemble your father. Got a better hairline, but you resemble him. The reality is, I'm thankful that he bears my name. And I pray big things for Jason, George, and Jayla. I pray for huge things. I pray whether they be in service for the King in capacity like I am, or whether they're just an honest lawyer, oxymoron, an honest lawyer, that someday they will have a testimony for Jesus that stands out. I pray that people, when they look at my children, they may see Jason Filler, but more than seeing Jason Filler, I want people to see Jesus Christ when they see my children. That would make my heart overjoyed. And so, do you see something of Him in you? So, I want to give you some insecurity misnomers. Just some insecurity misnomers. We live in a society that tells us if you just surround yourself with a bunch of people that tell you how great you are, you're all right. Just surround yourself with a bunch of people that tell you how great you are. And you say, well, that's not me. I mean, I'm kind of like Jessica was. I'm kind of to myself. I'm kind of lonely. I'm kind of quiet. Wait a minute. I know there are people, even in this room, and I love you dearly, and I'm one of them. From time to time, I am in this category that track our Facebook posts to see how many people liked it. I post something about my wife, the likes go through the roof. I post a selfie of me, I get like 3. What is up with that? I mean, the other day I posted about her getting a job, like 200 likes. I put on the pastor of Brookway, 7. But we are living in a culture where we are cognizant of what people, what's your perception of me? What do you think of me? And the culture and society would like to teach you and tell you and really try to assure you that as long as you surround yourself with a bunch of happy people, you're not going to have insecurity. You're not going to have issues. And that's a lie. I'll tell you right now, you can be around a lot of happy people and you can go home at the end of the day and you can be lonely and you can cry. I've been there. I've been there as a pastor. I've been there as a dad. I've been there as a spouse. I've been there I've been there as a motor coach operator. I've been there where I've been around a lot of happy people, and even to the place where I get a nice tip, a gratuity at the end of the day, and I get home and I'm just like, I'm spent. I'm discouraged. What? I'm wore out. I'm unhappy. I'm unfulfilled. So, insecurity misnomers, some people will tell you just surround yourself with a bunch of people that tell you how great you are. The second area of a misnomer is this. If you tell yourself the greatest, if you tell yourself you're the greatest. This is Muhammad Ali, wasn't he? Was Muhammad Ali not self-declared as the greatest? And I liked him, actually. I liked that charisma, that confidence in him. But that only goes so far. Because let me tell you, when the disciples interacted with Jesus, none of them declared themselves as the greatest. They didn't. They may have had a little bit of dialogue, like which one will serve you to the greatest capacity. But the reality, it was Paul, who was also a follower of Jesus Christ, who said, I'm the chiefest of sinners. So this morning, let's not have a mirror mentality. Let's not be looking in the mirror and saying how great we are, how good we look, and we got to be careful of this, because this will not do anything for our insecurity. So the only lasting answer to insecurity is the following. It's a personal relationship with the Creator. I didn't realize until probably 2 years ago, sometimes people would tell me I have anxiety. I just kind of dismissed that rudely because I had never experienced it. About 2 years ago, I thought I was losing my mind. I was feeling closed in on. I was feeling judged. I was feeling ridiculed. I felt at times that I didn't know what later in the afternoon would bring because I was so filled with anxiety. Now, I knew all the verses, Levi. Cast all your care upon him, for he cares for you. I knew everything. Be anxious for nothing. Give no thought for tomorrow will take care of itself. I knew all the verses in King James. But I was still struggling with anxiety. So 2 years ago, if I would have preached this message, it would have probably been more of a book study. Today, it's kind of a personal journey. And I can tell you this morning, by the grace, I'm not saying I never struggle yet, but I can tell you by the grace of God, this message has helped me, and I believe it'll help you. The only lasting answer to insecurity is a personal relationship with the Creator. So let's review from our last message, David's discouragement. What? David's discouragement? You remember last time we met David, the little shepherd boy, knocks out Goliath? Remember that? Were you here? It was only 6 weeks ago that I preached. Come on, you couldn't have forgotten. So David's this little shepherd boy. He knocks out Goliath, dead. So I am studying the life of David, and I'm thinking from that point it had to just be turning, and it had to be just glowing. David just came off of a great experience. Now he's becoming a king and a leader, and so I'm thinking David's got this figured out. I mean, if you could beat the champion of the Philistines, you got a pretty good resume. True? Mm-hmm. But later I find that David and the host of his men, they're out, and they come back to Ziklag, and Ziklag's on fire, and their walls are burned down, They must have been Trump people. They built a wall. All right? Now their walls are burnt down. The city is in ruin. And in 1 Samuel 30, verse 6, I want you to get this, and David was greatly distressed. By the way, look at that verse. In the word distressed, you have the word stressed. David was stressed out. See, sometimes we look at the characters of the Bible and say, oh, if I was just like David, if I was just like Paul, if I was just like Ruth. The reality is, in this passage, David, yes, this follows his taking of the champion. This was later when he was part of the lead team. The lead team, okay? Pastor Brandon and I and summer intern Jessica and all this were part of the lead team. Brother Mike and Brother Tony and Brother Mike and part of the lead team. But yeah, he was part of this lead team. But he's stressed for the people's sake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughter, but David. Look at that. Whenever you see the word B-U-T in the Bible, it's a transition in thought. B-U-T. But David encouraged himself in the Lord, his God. David was stressed out. David had a great resume. David went to church. David did, he's called the man after God's own heart. That's a pretty good gravestone, saying, David, man after God's own heart. What's going on? There are seasons that we come to where we're going to get distressed. So how are we going to go through these seasons? So this is it. I'm going to lay this out to you the best I can. What do I do when I'm discouraged? You ever get there? Do you ever get discouraged? Do you ever find yourself just like, ugh? So we're going to answer this morning. First point is this. Realize your identity in your Creator. Realize your identity. In 1976, I was adopted from Bogota, Colombia. I love going back to Bogota. In all honesty, it would probably be the second place, only to Baton Rouge, that I desire to live, is Bogota. I would go there in a heartbeat. Honestly. I'm not going to go there if it's not God's will, and I don't believe it is right now, but maybe someday it will be. And I love it. I remember the first time I went there as an adult, and I was able to go back to the orphanage that I was adopted from. And there's this little plexiglass area. You saw all these little bambinos and bambinas, and they saw me standing on the outside of that plexiglass, and they all put their hands up. And I remember putting my hands up on that glass and our hands touching. And I remember it was just powerful for me because I knew at that time, about 30 plus years earlier, I was on the other side of the glass. It was awesome. I mean, it was really awesome. So I'm looking at all these kids, I'm like, wow. How much checked luggage can I take home? I mean, I'd love to take all those kids home. Surprise, Anna! For the Duggars. I would just love to take all those kids home. It was just powerful for me. It was a Saturday, Levi, where I went into this orphanage. And there was nobody working with the exception of one lady who was in the accounting office. And in 1976, she was adopted as well. But she was adopted into a Colombian family. And we were adopted, we found out, within the same 6 weeks of one another. How cool is that? And she was very bilingual, and she was able to communicate with me effectively. And I said, so did you ever meet your birth parents? And she just lit up. She said, yeah, I met my birth parents about 9 months ago. And I said, I really only shared this with my adoptive mother. I said, Mom, I really would like to meet my birth parents someday. Really, and I think when you're adopted, I don't know how many of you are adopted in here, but I think there's just that inner desire that someday you'll meet your birth parents. I remember even as a little boy, I used to write Mother's Day cards in school to my birth mom, who I've never met yet. Because there was such an inner desire. I wanted to see, I'm confident my mom was 6'2". And just beautiful, long, flowing black hair, and probably Miss Colombia. I mean, look at the features. She had to. And my dad was probably this great, wealthy coffee grower, Juan. And I'm just confident of it. I just can't get the genealogy to work for me, but I'm confident of it. I would love to see, and I love my adoptive parents. Jay and Mary are awesome. But I've never lost the desire to see my biological parents. I'd love to touch my mom's face. Well, she left you at a restaurant booth. Yeah, and I've been a food snob ever since. She did abandon me. She did leave me at a restaurant booth. But I'd love to touch my mom's face. I'd love to tell my mom I love her. I'd love to tell my biological mom, thank you. I'm an American, and I'm a proud American. I would have probably been born and reared in a low-income strata, steeped in Catholicism, probably living on the streets. My mom, my adoptive mother, gave me a wonderful life. But don't you know God knew all this before Jay and Mary even showed up in Colombia? How cool is that? So I'm curious about my identity. So I'm in Boston the other day. I'm at the Cheers bar. Sorry, but I was. Didn't say I drank. I was there, though. And I was just enjoying the surroundings. And had some chowder, and all that good stuff. And I came out, and I didn't realize they had this American Copa soccer tournament. And there's a little store on the end, just like a temporary setup. And I could buy a Colombian soccer jersey with my name on it. And man, I wore that through the airport, so proud. And everybody in the airport yesterday spoke to me in Spanish. I just said, "Sí," I have no idea what they're saying. "Sí," And I wore that because that's part of my identity. In 1981, I became a child of God. And I took on a new identity. I had a name change from unbeliever to now believer. And you know what? Even though I want to see my biological mother, and maybe in heaven someday I will, get this, you got to get this. Someday I want to see the one who purchased me, Jesus. I want to touch his face. I want to feel the impressions of his nail-pierced hands. Yes. Yeah. And I hope when I get to heaven, get this. I'm kind of excited. It's been 6 weeks. It's kind of been, stirring in. Get this. I hope when I see him, I'll be able to look back on earth and say, wow, we had some similar characteristics. I looked a little bit like my heavenly Father. The way I acted, the speech I used, the influence I made. No one can tell you who you are better than your Creator. I've been to psychologists. Not always proud of that. I've laid on leather couches. I've spilled my guts. How's this, Brookway? I've been institutionalized. I've been on the psych ward for 42 days. You say, well, we knew that. And when I got out of there, I realized that God has a bigger purpose for me than to just tell other people my problems. I need to start telling about my Creator. That's what it's going to make a difference for the kingdom. In Jeremiah 1:5 says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I love this. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. That's kind of my verse right there. God knew me before my birth mother knew me. I was created. Isaiah 43:1 says, but now thus says the Lord, he who created you, O Jacob, he formed you, O Israel. Fear not, for I've redeemed you and I've called you by name. You are mine. Praise God. So not only have I been created, I've been redeemed. It's like the story of the little boy who built a boat. He built this little boat. I mean, he was just a little guy, maybe George's age, and he built this little boat and he painted it blue. And every day he went into the calm waters and he would sail his little boat. He was so proud of that boat. Every day he would put that boat in the gentle water, and he wouldn't let it get too far out of his reach, and he'd pull it back in, and he'd put it back down, and he was so proud of it, and all of a sudden it became something of interest to his friends. And so they would look at that boat, and they just enjoyed that homemade boat so much, and they would let it go up and down and up and down and up and down. And one day, as he put the boat in the water, one of his friends was talking to him, and he became easily distracted in his youth. And all of a sudden, when he went back to look, the boat was gone. And every day he went back to the bank and he looked for his boat, because that boat was something that he built. It was something that he created. It was something that he invested in. It was something that he came to appreciate. It was his marksmanship, that boat was. Oh, it wasn't fancy, and it probably didn't hold a lot of value in anybody else's eyes, but that boat was built by him. Just like Bill builds a craftsman. He builds things, and I'm sure you've looked at things and that has your marking on it. That was built by Bill. This little boat was as well. Days had gone by, weeks had gone by, and even months had gone by, and all of a sudden this little boy was walking through the streets of his very small village, and there in the thrift shop he saw his boat. He was so excited, he went into the thrift shop, talked to the thrift shop worker, and he said, "That's my boat, that's my boat." And all of a sudden the boat had a price on it. And the thrift shop worker quickly said, No. Somebody sold us that boat. Now you have to purchase it. Oh, the boy was crushed. But I built that boat. I made that boat. Well, there was no leeway with that shop owner, so he went back home, and through the next several months, he began to save money. And he bought back that which was lost. God created us, and He didn't lose us. We lost ourselves. But aren't you thankful? We can get a little excited on this. Aren't you thankful that we've been bought back by Jesus?
Amen.
We've been created, but not only have we been created, we've been redeemed. So let me give you a couple things. I don't know how the slides are going to flow through this, but when I'm blessed, when am I blessed? When am I blessed? You are blessed. And your blessings are never based on what you have, but rather they are reflections of whose you are. See, sometimes we look at each other and say, man, you're really blessed. You got a new car, you're blessed. You bought a new house, you're blessed. You've been on cruises the last 4 weeks, you're blessed. Sorry, I'm distracted there. You're blessed. But hold on, wait a minute. Our blessings are not based on what we have.
Right.
I'll tell you right now, some of the most blessed people I've ever preached to are in the poorest countries of this world. Blessed. Your blessings are not based on what you own, but rather who owns you. Can I say that one more time?
Yeah.
Your blessings are not based on what you own, but rather who owns you. So you could go to the ATM today and put in the card, and it can say not today, and you can still be blessed. I've been there. My wife's been there because of me. Like my new shoes? No, just kidding. Blessings aren't based on what you have and who has. It's based on who has you. So let's not only talk about blessing, let's talk about success. Well, how do you define success? True success is found when you fulfill the role you were created to fill. So for some of you, it's working at Granger. It's not how far Mike works his way up. Mike's blessed working at Granger because he has a job and he can meet the needs of his family. Dana working for the state of Louisiana, you're blessed, Dana. Now there may be days when you don't feel like it, and you may feel there'd be days that's not a real successful career path, but the reality, we're defining success incorrectly. True success is found when you fulfill the role you were created to fulfill. So yes, if you're doing what God would have you do, you're successful. Some of us, where we fall away from this, is we're being used incorrectly. It's like the man who went for a job interview. He was so nervous, poor guy. He was from Alabama. Went for this job interview, and he gets into the interviewing room, and he had made some coffee, which the receptionist had offered, maybe just to calm his nerves a little bit. And he put in the cream, and he put in the sugar, but guess what? Dude, he forgot to stir it. So he was sitting there, and he had a little time, and he didn't notice, but the employer, the interviewer, was coming back into the room, and he noticed on the employer's desk, the prospective employer, that there was a pen. He didn't know anybody was in the room, so he went ahead and he took that Mount Blanc pen and used it as a stirrer. That wasn't what it was intended to be used for, and hence he did not get the job that day. Some of us may not be being utilized because we're not doing what we need to do, and therefore when we're not utilized to His glory, we have insecurities. Let me just tell you this. If you're being used to what He would have you be used for, your insecurities will be much less. So Jenny, you got into this nurse practitioner program, correct? I'm so excited for you, by the way. But God took you from a teacher, so you meet Brandon. That's all I could figure. Then you became a nurse, and now you're on the path to being a wealthy one. How's that, Levi? It works for me. You know, I love it. But you couldn't have started there because God was writing the story. And there's people at Bethany Christian that still look up to you very much because of the influence you had on their life. You know? Being used to his glory. Point number 2, reject your insecurities with confidence. So the first point today was realize your identity in our Creator. I'm created by him, and I'm going to be used to what he would have me be used for. Number 2, reject your insecurities with confidence. Insecurity begins to die a slow death the moment you are secured by Jesus. The day you get saved, your insecurities lessen. You say, how can you say that? I struggle with insecurities every day. Okay, I'm not upset with you, but realize this. Wouldn't you rather have a few insecurities and be saved than be lost and not have any insecurities?
Amen.
The greatest insecurity man faces is whether or not they'll go to heaven or hell. I had a pleasant visit yesterday with an agnostic. But the reality I know is the conversation went further and further and further, and we started talking about eternity. That's where he turned it off. Because there's no eternal hope for an agnostic. So let me give you a few things. What type of securities can we have when we get into that relationship with Jesus Christ? What kind of security does he bring us? The first one is he brings us eternal security. In John 10:28 and 29, it says, I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. My Father, which gave them me, is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand. We have eternal security. So we have a hope in heaven. Aren't you thankful for that, by the way? There's some security. I would be a mess. I am a mess, but I would be a greater mess if I thought that my salvation and my home in heaven were kind of in the balances. I'm very confident when I die, I'm going to heaven someday. And I'm thankful for it. Not only do we have eternal security, secondly, we have physical security. Physical security. I know some of you struggle. Stephen, one of my better friends, struggles with this from time to time, and he's taught me a lot through that. Let me say that again. He's taught me a lot through that. But I want you to get this, for those that struggle with the physical piece. I want you to get this. This is a little controversial, but if you hear me out, I think you'll understand this is what God intends. Hear me out. There is nothing that comes into your life physically that God does not intend. So you have security. You say, why? Because God oversees it. See, I'll go as far as using this verse, and I trust it is most appropriate. 1 Thessalonians 5:24, faithful is he that calleth you, who will also do it. So are you saying, Jason, as long as we're followers of Christ, we'll never have physical problems? I didn't say that. But I will say this, as we have physical problems, they're ordained by God. They're ordained by God. And therefore, I believe with all my heart, I am on mission for God. I believe that with all my heart. But next year, if I get a terminal disease, that doesn't lessen anything that God is. That may mean my assignment is nearly up. Well, it's so morbid. If I take a dirt nap, I go to heaven, folks.
Amen.
You can't scare me with death. Because I'll be dancing on the streets of gold where you'll start strumming that Brookway, Brandon. Who's got the better location? So think through this. I have physical security. Some people have such insecurity when it comes to diseases and all this. I'm not making fun of that, but I'm saying this. Brookway, we're all going to die. I've done funerals for kids. So if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, God's given you some great blessings. He's given you some added years. Because it is never easy to bury a baby. Ever. I've done that. It's hard. Not me personally, but I've been involved in that service, in that environment. Third, emotional security. Oh, this is where some of us, I'm serious, this is where some of us struggle. We're up and we're down. Emotional security. I know the message is just a little bit longer today, but I got to get through this. Emotional security. God gives us emotional security. Look at this verse. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always. How cool is that? So God was with me a few days ago in Quebec City, even though my family, we got to close out. Point number 3. Remember, your influence has changed. And we're all talking about battling these securities. So the first thing we see this morning is realize your identity in the Creator. Number 2, we see that we are to reject your insecurities with confidence. And then number 3, remember your influence has changed. Let's look at this last verse, Galatians 6:1. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently, but watch yourselves or you also may be tempted. Now, I love this. This is all going to tie together. As we journey with Jesus, God writes our story. And part of the reason our story is being composed as it is that someday we'll be able to help somebody else go through their struggle as well. So you've been divorced once, twice, 3 times a lady. Get over it and help somebody go through their marriage struggles. So you've been an addict. The biggest addiction, there's 2 big addictions that the church struggles with. Believe it or not, pornography and addiction to prescribed medications. That's the 2 biggest addictions that are in the church. Prescription meds and porn. If God has freed you with that, there's probably somebody even here sitting within close proximity that hasn't been freed of that yet. Help them. Encourage them. If someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person. Look at that next word. Gently. See, this last point is such a practical point. Remember, your influence has changed. So now, should you go on a Saturday night, hear me out. This might rub people the wrong way, but I want to be clear on this. So now, if you go to the bar on Saturday night, you're not there to party it up with the boys. You're there to live a life of influence and maybe hear a story of somebody who needs to be in Brookway on Sunday morning. You say, we can't send missionaries into the bar. Where are we supposed to send missionaries? Into the church? You know? I meet people all the time. Not that I'm at the bar all the time. I meet people all the time who will talk to me more in a setting like that than some of you will talk to me in a setting like this. Because they're hurting and they're searching. True? Are we supposed to go out and find lost people in the church? There might be a few. The reality is our life has changed because our life has changed. Period. But so has our influence. Exclamation point. So now I can influence others with the change that has occurred in me. And we go back to that opening statement. When others look at me, do they see my Creator? You know why people were speaking to me yesterday on and off throughout the day as I was traveling in Spanish? Because there was a mistaken identity. I had a Colombian jersey, but I didn't have a Colombian tongue. And I hope when people see you, there's no mistaken identity. I hope when somebody is out in this place, this community, and they're broken, and they have stickers all over them, that we won't just add another sticker, but we'll say, hey, don't let it stick. Jesus wants to change your life. That can take place at a hair salon. That can take place at a Granger parking lot. That can take place at a seafood buffet at the casino. I know you Christians go there. That can take place at a hospital room bill, in a waiting room. I have ministered and witnessed to more people in hospital waiting rooms than anywhere else. So rather than sticking people with judgments and criticisms, don't let it stick. And when people are trying to put stickers on you, don't let it stick. Because we've been changed, and so has our influence.